It was after midnight. It was my aunt, Morgan Ann.
Wait, slow down.
And she told me, she said, I want you to know. She said, somebody broke in the house, Carol, and they shot your daddy.
The victim, 51-year-old Roy McCaleb, a Korean War veteran, was shot and killed while sleeping in his own bed.
I started crying and screaming, and so trying to get everything together.
We got over to Roy Joe's house, and the police was there and had the yellow tape up and everything.
And they won't let us in.
The person who held the key to the mystery was 43-year-old Carolyn Sue Krisen Wilson, Roy's wife. She claimed that a barefoot intruder was responsible for the horrifying crime.
He supposedly tortured her. He lit a candle, one of her candles with her matches, and dripped hot wax on her.
They get into some sort of scuffle.
And Carol says the guy told her that he would kill everybody in the house. She didn't stay in the room. He took her gun. Instead of going left down the hallway to exit the house, he went to the right to where my daddy was, sound asleep, and he shot my daddy in the head.
However, it would take an astonishing 28 years to finally uncover the identity of the perpetrator. Who could have taken the life of Roy McCaleb within the confines of his own home? Was this a home invasion, or did the chilling incident hold a deeper, more intricate truth? Today, we're looking into the twisted case of Roy McCaleb, who was murdered in 1985. Roy Joe McCaleb's life began on September 3, 1934, in Baytown, Harris County in Texas, as part of the McCaleb family, headed by Harvey Camry McCaleb and Roxy Joe McCaleb.
Roy Joe was very personable, and he liked everybody, and everybody liked him.
Although details about his early years remain limited, the narrative of McCaleb's life took a significant turn with his marriage in the late 1950s. The marriage was to his first wife, whose name remains undisclosed in the records. During his time in the uniformed services, he served in Korea and then was honored as a war veteran after completing his service. His dedication to his service did not hinder the growth of his family. On November 1, 1957, the couple celebrated the arrival of their first child, a daughter named Bridget. Building on this joyous foundation, just 3 years later, on February 11, 1960, they welcomed a baby boy named Alton into their family. The love that continued to grow within their household was evident as they expanded their family even further with the birth of their third child, a daughter named Pamela.
My father was a man's man. He took care of his family. He worked hard. If there's a party or a gathering with the family, he was usually going to be in the center of it.
However, McCaleb's married life took a tragic turn when their first child, Bridget, was diagnosed with Friedreich's ataxia, a devastating neurological disease resulting from a gene defect inherited from both parents. The diagnosis of this progressive disorder undoubtedly dealt a heavy blow to the family's hopes and aspirations.
It was hard on the whole family. There wasn't much medically that you could do for that. There was really no treatment for it.
The situation grew even more dire when, on January 7, 1981, the McCaleb family was shattered by the passing of Bridget, who was only 23 years old at the time.
When Bridget died, it was very hard on our family. We had never had to deal with anything like that.
I can remember when I got the phone call and I called my daddy and told him that Bridget was gone. And he kept telling me that everything's gonna be all right.
This heartfelt loss plunged her parents into a state of grief and despair.
My dad kept everything inside. You know, he didn't talk about things like that.
The weight of their grief and the challenges they faced in dealing with their daughter's illness and eventual passing took an immeasurable toll on their mental and emotional well-being. As a result, the once happy couple found themselves caught in a relentless cycle of anguish, eventually leading to the painful decision to part ways. A few years later, in 1983, a new chapter began in McCaleb's life when he crossed paths with Carolyn Krisen Wilson.
She dressed real nice. She was pretty.
Roy Joe had the personality that he never met a stranger. He didn't really have any trouble meeting people, and he still had his looks. So he didn't have any trouble getting the women either.
This meeting took place during his tenure as a foreman at Brown & Root, a prominent construction company located in Houston, Texas. At the time, Carolyn was in her early 40s and had retired from her role as a civilian employee with the Houston Police Department. She transitioned into a position working at Montgomery Elementary School's cafeteria.
The first time I met Carol, she just sat there and didn't participate in the conversation, so I thought she was just real shy.
And we went over there, but she just never did say anything very much.
Carol, where'd you get the blouse? It's beautiful. I love it. You remember where you got it?
I really had to force myself to make conversation with her.
United by their shared connection and mutual understanding, McCaleb and Carolyn found themselves drawn to each other's company.
I was really surprised when my husband come home one day and said, Carol and Roger are getting married.
You know, I was thinking, we have two wonderful families.
We do.
So I started asking him questions about where they was going to get married. He said they're going to get married in Rojo's house, and we're going. I think that Rojo, because he did have a long time marriage the first time, that he wanted that again, and she offered that to him.
I wanted to like Carol because she was going to be my sister-in-law, you know, but I couldn't get close to her. She just wasn't that kind of person. I'd have kept my mouth shut. You don't step between a man and his future wife.
In a burst of joy, the couple swiftly exchanged vows in the same year they met. Their journey began with the promise of a harmonious life in their North Shore home, marking the start of a new chapter as partners.
I was hoping that it would work out. He did act like that he was happy. The rest of the people that was there was happy, but she still was distant.
After marrying Roy, Carol would have had the ability to sort of lift the family up to be a pillar. But instead, it seems like she sort of took everyone down a notch.
The well-pictured life was shattered on September 22, 1985, when a tragic event unfolded within the walls of the McCaleb household. On that fateful day, McCaleb, alongside his wife Carolyn and their son Elton, who was with his girlfriend, were engaged in what appeared to be a routine moment in their North Shore residence. However, destiny had something different in store that would forever alter the course of their lives. A few weeks prior to the incident, McCaleb had had a heart attack and underwent surgery. On the day of September 22, 1985, he was sedated and was resting in his bed as part of the process of recovering from his surgery. But amidst it, in a house full of people, he was shot to death with a .38 caliber gun.
Hello?
It was after midnight. It was my aunt, Morgan Ann,
Wait, slow down.
and she told me, she said, I want you to know. She said, somebody broke in the house and Carol, and they shot your daddy.
When the police arrived at the scene, their first task was to assess whether this could be a case of a home invasion.
And we got over to Rojo's house, and the police was there and had the yellow tape up and everything.
And they won't let us in.
Nevertheless, no apparent signs of a forced entry into the house were evident. Although it seemed impossible for an outsider to commit the crime, Carolyn made a statement that would shock the investigators.
Carol said that she was on her way to work one day, and she was a couple of blocks from the house at a stop sign, and a man just jumped in her car and made her drive down to a park somewhere near their house. And
She claimed she didn't tell anybody because she didn't want to upset my father.
Continuing her account, Carolyn revealed a direct connection between her past trauma and the day of the crime. She explained that the same man from her previous assault had returned. On the day of the incident, he entered their home through an unlocked back door. Holding her at knife point, he assaulted her once more while her husband, her son, and his girlfriend were upstairs asleep.
She said she kept a gun underneath her pillow, and she pulls out the gun to, presumably stop the. He grabs the gun. He's holding a knife to her throat while he's sexually assaulting her.
He supposedly tortured her. He lit a candle, one of her candles with her matches, and dripped hot wax on her.
They get into some sort of scuffle.
And Carol says the guy told her that he would kill everybody in the house. She didn't stay in the room. He took her gun. Instead of going left down the hallway to exit the house, he went to the right to where my daddy was, sound asleep, and he shot my daddy in the head. And she said that when she heard a gunshot, she jumped up and ran in the hallway, and they bumped into each other. He dropped the gun, and then she fires 3 shots after him.
Nevertheless, when the police questioned Carolyn's friends and family members, they reported that Carolyn emerged from the house and calmly recounted the events that had transpired. Margaret McCaleb, a family member of the victim, shared her perspective, saying, "She just sat in a chair and just started talking about it as calmly as I am to you. She went home and took a shower. That set off alarms with me."
All I remember is Carol in the oversized chair with me, puts her arm around me, and is consoling me because I'm hysterical. And I was just shocked, but she didn't have a tear in her eye.
I just could not believe that a man raped her in the park. Well, how could he have even traced her to her house? How did he know where she lived to go back the second time?
This notable difference between Carolyn's seemingly collected demeanor and the gravity of the situation raised suspicions and sparked concerns among those who knew her, adding a layer of complexity to the ongoing investigation. The details of the crime scene investigation and the limited evidence obtained were shrouded in confidentiality. Most of the information was not publicly disclosed, including whether or not the bullet shells from the gun fired by Carolyn were discovered at the scene. Another significant point of concern emerged as Carolyn's son, Alton, came into focus. He was present in the house during the time Carolyn reported being assaulted by the barefoot man and when McCaleb lost his life. However, Alton's assertion was that he'd heard nothing unusual transpiring during these critical moments.
His room was directly across my daddy, very small house. And he claimed that the first shot he heard, he didn't pay much attention to it because he thought it was an air conditioner vent falling and hitting the wooden floor.
This discrepancy raised yet another red flag for investigators. And that was the only statement that police got out of him, as 3 years later, on November 4th, 1988, Alton McCaleb also passed away at the age of 28. The police also noticed a significant detail on the day of the murder. Carolyn's nightgown had traces of McCaleb's blood on it.
They find blood on it, but not her blood or an assailant's blood. It's blood spatter, and it's Roy McCaleb's blood.
Despite this observation, the police seemed unsure about the direction to take in the investigation. As time passed, the days without any clear leads stretched into months, and then stretched further into years. Pamela, McCaleb's youngest daughter, took it upon herself to regularly contact the district attorney assigned to the case, seeking updates at least once a year. However, despite these efforts, the case gradually grew cold, with no substantial breakthroughs in sight. In 2008, investigators revisited the case with a renewed perspective, driven by a determination to uncover evidence linking Carolyn to the murder. For years, law enforcement had harbored suspicions that Carolyn Kristen Wilson might be connected to her husband's shooting within their home. However, the necessary evidence for prosecution had remained elusive. This time, with a fresh commitment from the investigators, a methodical effort was launched to gather the pieces of the puzzle. It was revealed that Carolyn had tried to take out not one, but 2 life insurance policies on McCaleb, amounting to a substantial sum of $198,000.
She had taken out a pretty substantial amount of life insurance on Roy without his knowledge.
But I was told it was for $240,000.
This revelation raised eyebrows, as it pointed to a potential motive for his murder. Given that Carolyn stood to inherit the significant amount upon McCaleb's death, the financial gain could have served as a compelling incentive for her involvement in his killing. Despite the extensive legal proceedings spanning over 2 years, the insurance company eventually disbursed $48,000 from the policy. This amount was divided among the beneficiaries, with Carolyn receiving $19,000 and McCaleb's children being granted $21,000. The rest of the funds were directed towards covering expenses for the cemetery and funeral home services. It became evident that Carolyn did ultimately receive a sum of money in the aftermath of her husband's tragic passing. Another intriguing aspect of Carolyn's history emerged as investigators delved deeper. It was discovered that Carolyn had been married a total of 6 times. What made this particularly unusual was that one of her marriages actually occurred simultaneously with her marriage to McCaleb, creating a perplexing overlap. This revelation led to Carolyn being charged with bigamy due to the overlapping marriages. She then married for the 7th time after McCaleb's death and again got divorced in 1990. The suspicion that Carolyn's motive for murder might be linked to the life insurance money was intensified by the words of one of her former husbands, Melvin Laxon, who described her as money-hungry. Recalling their past, Laxon, who'd married Carolyn in 1976, shared his perspective. The first night I talked to her in that bar, she was so sweet and innocent and lovable. But after me and her got together, she was a living hell. Armed with the gathered evidence, Carolyn was at last formally charged with murder in 2008. However, a judge dismissed the indictment, causing a setback in the legal process. The journey towards justice continued, and in 2012, an appeals court reinstated the murder charge. Subsequently, a court date was scheduled, marking a significant step towards a resolution. Before the case could go to trial, a plea deal was reached. In 2013, Carolyn entered a guilty plea for the murder of McCaleb under a unique arrangement. In exchange for her plea, she was sentenced to just 6 months in prison, followed by a period of deferred adjudication spanning 10 years. This phase involved close monitoring during her sentence. If she managed to complete these 10 years without any violations, the conviction would not appear on her record. Despite entering a guilty plea, Carolyn continued to assert her innocence while behind bars. As conveyed by her attorney, James Stafford, her decision to confess was driven by a desire to move beyond the case. Supposedly grappling with a range of health problems, including dementia, she was reaching a point of exhaustion. Carolyn expressed her sentiments from the Harris County Jail, stating, "I don't understand the system. I'll never have faith in it again. I would never hurt Roy. I would never hurt my children like this." The victim's family was left deeply aggrieved by the comparatively short sentence, perceiving it as overly lenient. Despite their frustration, the plea deal was forged based on Carolyn's confession, her declining health, and the scarcity of additional evidence. Nonetheless, prosecutor Bill Exley shed light on the matter, revealing that Carolyn's Alzheimer's disease and dementia diagnosis had surfaced only recently. He emphasized that her competency had never been a matter of doubt, given the agreement of her own defense lawyer and the judge on this assessment. Conversely, defense attorney Stafford James stated, "Considering her age and mental condition, I believe all parties recognize that this was likely the appropriate and fair decision to reach." Carolyn's sentence didn't commence until December 26, 2013, affording her the opportunity to celebrate Christmas before beginning her term. This raised issues as well, particularly for McCaleb's daughter Pamela, who voiced her objection by asking, "How many holidays has she taken from us?" On December 26, 2013, Carolyn Sue Krisen Wilson, age 71, commenced her 6-month prison term in Houston, Texas, followed by 10 years of probation. While she successfully completed her sentence, her present location remains undisclosed and unknown. So, what are your thoughts on this case? Do you believe Carolyn was responsible for the crime? If she was indeed involved, do you consider the outcome of the legal proceedings to be a fair form of justice? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. If there's a case you'd like us to cover, don't hesitate to drop your recommendations in the comments section below. For more captivating true crime stories, like, share, and subscribe to our channel, Mysterious 7. Until next time, stay safe, and thanks for watching.